Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. We're broadcasting live from Park City, Utah, where I am, and Richard is in Mexico. So thank you all for attending today. Thank you for being Family Office Insights members and supporting Family Office Insights in our webinar activities. And hopefully soon we'll go back to in-person things in New York City. But we've been super grateful for everybody participating in Family Office Insights webinars through this interesting time that we've all been experiencing. So just a little bit of housekeeping here. As you know, we can't hear or see you, but we welcome your questions in the Q&A or the chat box. And please feel free to ask them as they come to mind, and we'll get to them. We have a bunch of folks coming on today, so please don't hesitate to put them in as they come to your mind. Again, you can put them in the chat box in the Q&A. We'll get to as many as possible. We're also going to be recording this and putting it on the Family Office Insights YouTube channel. So while you're watching this, if anything comes, something that you'd like to review, or there are others in your community and others that would benefit from hearing what you hear today, please feel free to connect with Richard, and you can refer them directly. And also we'll be making sure that you are connected post-webinar with Richard and Viscardii. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
So with that, again, thank you for being with us, and feel free to ask as many questions as you'd like. Richard, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Arthur. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hope it's informative for everybody. Arthur, just in terms of timing, should I give people a couple of minutes to get started, or tell me what you think?
I think we should
give a couple of minutes to
give them a little bit of your background, I think.
Sure, I'm happy to.
And then you get started into the story.
Wonderful. So, everyone, my background is I come from a tech background. I would say one of the founders of a software services company. So I have been doing software development for 25 years. I'm not a developer myself, but I have run a business that it does large dedicated software projects, software staffing in various industries. Insurance and finance and banking, geospatial, geographic information systems, et cetera, various different sectors. So I've had a pretty good breadth of a bunch of different vertical market sectors. But on the other side of my profession, a lot of my charity work has been geared towards the aging sector and the disabilities sector that has a lot of crossover. People that age become, although they don't consider themselves part of the disabilities community, become limited in movement, mobility, and cognitive and other various things. So there's a lot of cross-section. And it's actually that charity work and the work that my partner has done that actually led to this business model. So it's this business that you're going to hear about today, which I'll start at the beginning. We are out looking for $6 million of raise to move this business forward. Is really kind of the compilation of our careers, a lot of our professional career, a lot of our charity work coming together into what we think is an amazing opportunity. So let me start before I get into the presentation, just by giving you some background on how my partner Luke and I met and why this opportunity I think is unique. So it's actually through my software services company that I first met Luke Ringuet. Luke is a French Canadian, but has lived in Orange County, California for the last 35 years. He is truly one of the fathers of, if not the father of, the warehouse management revolution that has ultimately led to Amazon and other businesses like that. He founded a company that built a very early warehouse management piece of platform technology that modernized warehousing and continued to expand it all the way through supply chain fulfillment to the point where he had quite a customer base that I'll show you in a little bit. Still, many of those customers are still using the platform. He sold that company, ended up buying the IP back, And that's really when I met him. He wanted to meet with me to talk about using my scalable software resource to help modernize this platform. And we did. Over the last several years, we have modernized the platform. We have expanded it beyond warehouse management, fulfillment, supply chain to include a marketplace layer. So where we stand today is we have, from an intellectual property standpoint, from a technology platform standpoint, a piece of intellectual property that in every way is capable of competing with Amazon and Alibaba. Over the years, this intellectual property has had $25 million invested in it. It's a big piece of software. It's between 4 and 5 million lines of code, 2,000 screens. And as you'll see as we go through the presentation, it's been used by really a lot of high-profile quality companies over the years that have leveraged it. So when Luke and I met, we had a discussion about, what is it we want to do with this? We were investing money in modernizing it and adding this marketplace layer. On the one side, you could become a platform company. Ultimately, we had this common interest in the aging in place, the aging market, the disabilities market, what we call the longevity market. And we decided that we wanted to use this platform to create a vertically market-focused marketplace. So where I would consider Alibaba a very horizontal marketplace in that they sell everything across a wide spectrum, there are very good examples of vertically focused marketplaces that have really gained enormous traction. And that was a decision that we made to do. Then COVID hit, and we kind of watched, and we saw an incredible outcome in the area specifically of vertically focused marketplaces. So with that, let me move into the presentation, and I'll just re-stress a couple of points here. I want to start on the intellectual property side. This platform is impressive and big and broad. And one of the most unique things about it is that from a customer standpoint, we can have two folks working out of their garage, leveraging the Express Lite, the lowest version of this software, have them grow from two people out of a garage to a $6 billion business, and they never need to leave this software. It's a single database that can carry them through their entire progression as a business. And as I said, it's a sizable piece of software, millions of lines of code, thousands of screens, but can scale down to a 2-person operation. So we have a variety of products, Express Lite, Prime. We're able to enable our partners within our marketplace through the use of this technology, which is very important. To give you, again, some examples of customers that have used this over the years: Procter & Gamble's of the world, Microsoft, Corporate Express, Mattel. So there are large corporations that have leveraged this technology for modernization of their warehouse supply chain fulfillment. So going back to what we found during COVID, and this has continued to today, the vertically focused marketplaces, about 9 months into COVID, we started looking at some of the competitors within that space, companies like Expedia and Etsy. The middle box is Etsy. I apologize that got covered up as we scaled this. Wayfair. Those companies, because they're vertically focused marketplaces, they saw market cap growth that was exponential. Etsy in particular is a very closely aligned comp for us, I would say, in that they followed a very similar growth track. They started their growth through some acquisitions, something that we're going to do. You'll hear about that. And they are a very, what Etsy does, so that folks, in case you don't know what Etsy is a marketplace where folks that make homegrown products can sell their products globally on a marketplace. So it's a really widespread, it used to be when you wanted like arts and crafts stuff, you had to go to an arts and crafts show. And Etsy was the replacement for that. There are still arts and crafts shows, but Etsy provided an environment where these artists, where these folks making jewelry and other homegrown products could sell. So the path of Etsy very much followed the path that we intend to do. So initial growth through acquisition to gain market share grab, to become the leader in their vertical market, and then organic growth beyond that. But in the first year of COVID, Etsy's market cap grew by 266%, as did Wayfair, as did Expedia, different percentages. But all of these vertical focused markets grew exponentially in terms of their market cap because the purchasing patterns of the populations changed. And in particular, one of the sectors that led those purchasing pattern changes was the adult population, who traditionally has stayed away from technology, but because of COVID had no choice but to change their purchasing patterns. So if they wanted new furniture, they learned about Wayfair. If they wanted homegrown products, Etsy, et cetera. Even Expedia, a travel site you would think wouldn't do so well in COVID. Look at their market cap growth, just because of the transition of purchasing patterns within the populations, in particular in the population that we're looking to serve. So here we sit launching, with the idea of launching a vertically focused marketplace. We have this incredible IP with 25 million plus invested in it over the years. We have an enormous market sector, as I'll show you right here, just some basic statistics, and I'm happy to send this out to anybody. But here's the underlying nature behind all of this data. By 2050, we are talking about a population of 2 billion people on the planet are within this longevity, or if you will, the aging in place sector. That is 1 in 5 people projected on the planet. So we can go into the statistics of various countries. At the end of the day, it's a simple math. 1 in 5 people on the planet will be within the sector of the population that we will look to target through our marketplace. From a competitive standpoint, what's so interesting about this sector is that the fragmentation of the focus on the aging or the longevity sector. There are already well-defined industries and many corporations that are involved in this. This is a picture of a market map that was done externally from us of all of the different sectors that are trying to sell into the longevity sector. But what's interesting about this sector is that there is no marketplace. All of these individual boxes kind of functions independently. And you might have companies that are selling through e-commerce, right? But there's a vast difference between e-commerce and a marketplace. E-commerce is inventory laden. It's a company typically out there trying to sell their own inventory, and it carries risk with the inventory. You see a lot of product specials because they may have high bunches of inventory. A marketplace is different. A marketplace is a digital ecosystem that is connecting the manufacturers to the consumers. And in our sector, the consumer is not always the aging person. The consumer is quite often the child or grandchild of the aging person. It's an assisted living facility. It's a government program that could include Medicare, Medicaid, could include SSDI. So it can go all the way from individuals, healthcare providers, support providers, et cetera. It's often not the member of the aging population that is doing this purchasing. But our model is to create the cohesion, to create a digital environment, leveraging our intellectual property that allows all of these companies to list not only their products, but also affiliated services, even including, for example, financial services. This marketplace can help people understand, can they leverage Medicare, Medicaid, or SSDI to help pay for the products or services that we need? So it's a digital ecosystem that allows manufacturers of products, service providers, even up to government agencies, service providers, financial service providers, end-of-life settlement and life planning, estate planning providers, to engage in this ecosystem to create a single environment, and none exists today, a single environment where products and services for folks that are in this population can go to connect with all the people that you see on this market map. And from a competitive standpoint, there is none of that. We get asked quite often, who's your competition. And the first thing is to say, well, why wouldn't it just be Amazon? And I'll ask each of you to do this. You can literally go on Amazon and you can type in mobility solutions for seniors. Sometimes the answer to that query changes by geography. When I do it, what I get in my market is things like CBD or books about exercise and wellness, right? Because Amazon is a non-sector focused marketplace. It's a horizontal, sell anything that we can that is popular, right? So they really, when it comes to these kind of vertical focuses, products and services for specific industries, oftentimes the vertically focused marketplace wins out because they're focused on exactly understanding what it is the customer is looking for in that query. So I look at it and say Amazon is absolutely not a competitor of ours. So the question becomes, who is? And when you look at the companies that are selling into this sector, you have a bunch of things. You have a bunch of franchise models, and I've given some examples here. They're really good companies. We know the investors behind 101 Mobility for a couple of years. I actually looked at investing in a franchise with 101 Mobility, ultimately decided not to move forward that specifically because of some of the layers and fees associated with moving into that sector. Franchise models, carry, probably goes without saying, carry oftentimes pretty excessive fees off the top line. But the franchises are prevalent here. There are some of them. I believe they are can be somewhat disrupted on the product side by connecting manufacturers directly to consumers. But we view franchises out there as partners because ultimately they may provide within our marketplace installation and other services that are critical to people that are out there and trying to live in their homes longer, trying to live in their communities longer independently. Other potential competitors are company-specific e-commerce sites. But again, e-commerce sites are inventory intensive, and oftentimes even companies that have e-commerce sites also have retail sites, which we know are laden with the expensive retail sites. So the message on this page is nobody has created the single go-to marketplace for the aging in place or the longevity sector. So what we are attempting to do is to become the absolute champion, the absolute leader, and doing it by fast scaling our business through some initial acquisitions in this space and allowing that leadership position to take hold, use the public markets, and go and build extreme organic growth through our brand development beyond the acquisitions. So, to go to that point, what is our intent? Our intent is initially actually looking for between $6 and $10 million. We have some stuff to do, a small acquisition we want to do. There's a little bit of UX, UI design on the marketplace side. That includes things like culturalization and specifically designing purchasing patterns for the various types of buyers and building a UX, a high level design around, and obviously building out our sales and operations teams. We also have strong partnerships in Mexico and are going to look to include that. Our focus in the initial phase is going to be just North America. There certainly is global opportunity here, but we see so much opportunity in the North American market between Mexico, Canada, and the United States that in the early phase of this, we don't need to step outside. We want to be 6 inches wide and 2 miles deep, if you will, before we start to look internationally. But our expectation is to very quickly, as we launch this marketplace, go into acquisition mode. We're planning beyond our small initial acquisition, 3 acquisitions, 2 product companies and a logistics fulfillment company. We have several of those targets in mind. The idea of those acquisitions is really to acquire revenue, acquire staff. We need obviously some large teams as we organically grow this, and to use that expansion to hit the public markets. The intent is to try and take this to the public markets in the 2006, 2007 timeframe, and then use those resources to really expand the brand in North America and even start to look at a global launch. So that's really the business model that we're looking at. just to show you guys some financials very quickly. What you see here is obviously behind this is a very, very detailed financial model that goes down into line item detail, probably more detailed than any of you will ever want to see. But what you see here is a little bit of a hockey stick. And the important thing for me to help you understand is that the reason that this is a hockey stick is this 5-year pro forma that we built is really during the acquisition phase. So yes, we have rapid revenue growth because we're trying to create that early leadership position that people will have great difficulty catching up with because of the barrier of entry caused by our IP. But to use the acquisition model to rapidly grow so that we can look towards those public markets and create an IPO out of this. So, the last slide, I think before we get to some questions, and just to re-stress this, I wanted to do a separate line just to show the predictability of the revenue and how much of it is coming from acquisition versus organic. And what you see down on that bottom line is a lot of the revenue, over time. Do we grow? Do we have some organic growth during the period? Yes, we do. But why we feel the revenue model is very predictable is that 71% of our revenue in the first 5 years, before we leverage the public markets and expand brand and really start to push a high level and rapid organic and international growth, 71% of our revenue during this pro forma period comes from acquisitions.
Richard?
So, yeah, please, Arthur.
Just for context, if that's the case,
yes,
the pricing model for the marketplace, just to give some context, is it subscription and revenue share or just revenue share? What do you think it's going to start out?
Yeah, you're talking about for folks other than the acquisition that want to list product on our, we have built technology that enables them quite easily to list their products and services directly on our marketplace. And we're taking, just like a distributor would, we're taking a share of every transaction. So we enable them, if they need it, we can enable them through our IP to leverage our fulfillment systems. So, on Amazon, what's happening behind the scenes, you buy a product and all of the fulfillment, all the logistics is worked out for you. That's literally what our product does, oftentimes even matching you up to a service provider if there's installation required. So the consumer goes on, they pick the product they want, they acquire it. Our software completely handles the transaction from a matching to an installer, matching to a service provider if needed, handling all the supply chain, all the fulfillment, all the logistics, all the way down to the last mile. So if they need our warehouse management solution, they can get it through our intellectual property. If they just want to handle, have our system handle logistics of fulfillment, they can do that too. But we've built the system so that they can very easily uplist their products onto our marketplace, products and services onto the marketplace. And we take a percentage of every transaction without any product liability, by the way, without any product or service liability.
Right.
Very important point.
Yeah, just catalyzing sales.
Yeah.
It may not matter, but I thought about it when you were talking about the background of the software.
Yes.
Are you going to be a customer of the software company, or are you the software company?
Yes. So this marketplace is receiving an exclusive for our marketplace, a perpetual license to the intellectual property. Yeah. So it is not owned by, but we have lockdown rights for our sector of the market. Luke Ringet, the founder of this software, is my 50-50 partner in this marketplace.
Yeah, so totally aligned. Got it. Yeah. Okay, great. Continue.
I mean, honestly, I went over, I know I moved fast. I'm not even sure we've got, I think, 5-6 minutes left. And so are there any questions that people have? I know I moved quickly, but I wanted to make sure we could get to some questions. Arthur, do you have any questions?
There's some questions. Let me get to them. One of the things is, and we talked a bit prior, if you don't mind repeating it, where you are on the raise.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're looking currently to raise $6 million to, as I showed in the use of capital page to do an initial small acquisition and to build out our team, do some of that UX UI design on the front end of the marketplace, specifically around the various types of purchasers of products. Because you have both consumers, for example, I buy these products from my parents who are in their 80s, but you also have institutional healthcare providers, senior living facilities, government buyers. So we want to do a little bit of very high level professional UX UI design around the purchasing patterns of each of those buyers. And to build out our sales and our growth team, and then turn around quickly and go out for true acquisition capital to enable these 3 acquisitions in 2024.
And you have some soft commitments from folks.
We have a few soft commitments from some folks who are what I would call non-strategic investors. They're just money people, which, by the way, nothing wrong with that. But they're not specifically people that are interested in this sector. They're just people that kind of believe what we're doing. We are also talking to two strategic prospective investors. Speaking so well today, aren't I? 2 strategic potential investors.
Yeah.
One of who is in the durable medical goods sector, multi-billion-dollar business in the durable goods sector. The other is a provider of services for Medicare, Medicaid, and SSDI. So you can see how both of those types of prospective investors can feed into this marketplace, leverage in one case their products, in one case their service directly into the marketplace, and to kind of disrupt and oftentimes break down the legacy channels that have existed for so many years and have cost layers as part of those legacy distribution channels. Marketplaces are really good at disrupting legacy distribution channels, and that very much is our model here. We want to connect manufacturers and services providers, instead of going through the layers and the distribution layers, directly to purchasers, not necessarily just the aging population, but the people that are purchasing products and services for them, including the governments. The government of Mexico purchases a lot of products for people in their country. They have large government programs like we do for acquisition of durable medical goods, for services, for people that are part of the longevity and the disability sector. So we want to go connect directly from the manufacturer and the service providers right to those buyers.
So when we talked originally, and there's some questions about this, one of your objectives was to help the people who make the decision about aging parents, keep them in their home,
yes,
and that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about how this is going to help that?
Yeah, I mean, those are hard things, right? People that are making those decisions, they don't often know where to turn. They're the first thing they do is they think about home health care, home health support, things of that nature. They struggle with finding the right combination of people. But it's this plethora of services. So I'll give you an example. I'm engaged to an amazing woman, and her parents are 80 and 84. They live in their home that my fiance grew up in, but her mom is battling several forms of cancer and struggles to get up and down in the home. They have a single staircase. So I called the franchise that I knew in the Philadelphia area where they live, and I had them go in, and I said, listen, if you have a really good quality refurbished unit, go and look to put it in. They did. They put in a stair climber into my future mother-in-law's home. The price of that installed for a refurbished unit was $7,000. I happen to know the COGS of the cost of that unit. It's about $1,450, right? So what happens from the $1,450? Yes, we've got some installation fees, certainly, but what happens between the $1,450 and the $7,000 to get to that level? And if you didn't know that you could ask for a refurbished unit, or if you didn't know where to go to find that stuff, what do you do? And what if you need additional home care, health care? How do you kind of create this cohesion for the individuals that are buying a variety of sources? Think about it from a future standpoint. We all know that hospitals are trying to push people out of the hospitals back into their homes quickly. Well, what's required for that? There's going to be going into our homes a plethora of IoT devices that can measure people's health, whether it be, a measurement in the toilet that's measuring urine and stool, whether it's going to be, a bar in your bathroom that measures your pulse and your blood pressure. These all have to feed into an electronic healthcare system, right? So all of these future IoT devices that are doing health monitoring for us, they're all going to require home installation and people knowing what products and how to get them installed properly into the homes. So even for doctors and for healthcare providers, we create an ecosystem where they can bring together all of these components into one with people that are qualified to do the work, right? So the companies that are out there building IoT devices, many of these companies some are large, some are small and just have innovation, and they need a way to get to the market. We're going to provide that path to the market for them.
So thank you for answering that question, in that there's such a margin in the refurbished unit, probably similar or greater margin in the new ones.
Yes.
Is that just because they can?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Nobody is buying enough product from any individual source to have a what I would call a competitive position to drive down the cost.
Yeah.
Right. So, but if the marketplace all of a sudden starts creating this environment, we have an incentive to drive down cost for people. And we start by doing it by, taking away those layers of distribution, right? And that's right now where a lot of the cost is coming from. It's the layers of, think about a franchise. I mean, in any franchise, what does the franchise take off the top?
Yeah.
7%, 8%, 9%, 10%.
That's a
layer of
yeah.
That's a layer of fat that the individual is paying for, that my future mother-in-law paid for, right? Yeah. Because built into that franchise cost model is that franchise fee.
Yeah.
So you can see it's easy to understand how these costs build up over time. And that's really what marketplaces do. Their marketplaces are exceptional at disrupting those legacy distribution channels. And that's very much our intention to do it. We want to see people have immediate access and direct access to the manufacturers of these products and directly to the service providers.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Richard, what do you think of without putting yourself in a corner or trying to prognosticate the future, the next round looks like?
What is the next round in terms of the IPO money?
Yeah, is it?
I'm sorry, the acquisition money, the acquisition funds.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you bring that. We've actually talked to folks about that. Some pretty well-known financial institutions in Manhattan. I'm a North Jersey kid, right? So the Manhattan circles are pretty familiar to me. So there's two common thoughts about it. One is that the second round will be much, much easier to raise than the first round. Right.
Surprise, surprise. Right.
Yeah. And the second thing is that if we get to that point, some of the people that have been looking at it, and actually the idea of comping us to Etsy came from one of those financial institutions. And they believe, and you can see it here in the funding map, that they believe that if we get to the acquisition phase, we could be looking at a pre-money of 120 to 150 million on what we project as a $40 million raise. So, we do foresee some good growth in the pre-money value. And that's not just coming from us, that's coming from these other sources. I'm not good at, and I'm not stupid enough to try and predict the financial markets, especially in the geopolitical system we're living in right now. But all we can do is look at history as an example and look at some of the companies that have forged the path before us. And these kinds of pre-money values are not uncommon in the path that we're pursuing. So we hope that the market will stay where it is right now. I continue to see growth. Just yesterday, I got an article about how the aging population has completely changed their purchasing patterns, that they have no choice. And that's not going away, right? The growth of digital and the use of technology for connectivity and acquisition of products and services is only growing. So everything is pointing in a common direction for us. But again, it's very hard to predict the future.
Has the aging population statistics changed at all in the last, you know, I guess 4 or 5 years from the great, boon of people that are going to be at, as you're suggesting here? Is this gotten better in terms of your thesis, or about the same, worse?
I would say these numbers have remained consistent for a long time because they're long-term trends. Has there been a little bit of a short-term blip from COVID? Yes, for the first time, the average age expectancy of the US population went down a little bit. And that's caused by some of the changes with COVID. But the aging of our population, the increases to healthcare, the focus on health and wellness, people are just living longer. And although we've had a short-term blip here, nobody is predicting that is going to continue, that all of a sudden the age of folks is, what they're predicting for my children are, just out of college age, their life expectancy exceeds 100.
Yeah.
Right. So the predictions continue to head in that same direction, further in, and they're going to be working and living independently longer. Right.
Yeah.
So all arrows are pointing in a common direction for us. That's what I love about this sector. It's the largest kind of sub-demographic, the fastest growing sub-demographic within the global population. And there are real concerns about it. How do you feed these people? How do you service them? If we live to be 100, especially for people my age, if God forbid, all of us live to be 100, our retirement plans don't take us out that long. How do we provide funding for that population on a scaled basis? How do we house them? How do we serve them? How do we feed them? So all of these problems are not just US problems, they're global problems.
No, they're global problems.
India, the Middle East, China, huge aging populations. So these are markets that we, want to tap into and ultimately get to. But, again, during this pro forma period, we're going to stay focused on North America, stay close to home, get really good at what we do in this market before we start having to think about multi-currency, culturalization, all those things that are required for globalization.
So what would you, it's sometimes hazardous to put yourself in a market segment box, but is this a logistics company, or is this a longevity company, a logistics longevity company? What is it?
I think what we really are is a longevity business, right? Yeah. We just happen to be leveraging our intellectual property to provide access to this community of people, to provide the cohesion to this market map that I showed, right? You can only imagine the fragmentation that exists in this picture.
Yeah, it's
right?
A mess. Yeah.
Ours is a health and wellness business.
Yeah.
But it's a digital health and wellness business that just happens to be leveraging our intellectual property to create this disruption in the marketplace, to provide, and I'll use the word disruption negatively and then convert it to the positive, which means we're going to create cohesion within this picture that you're seeing right here. And that's really what we want to do. We want to bring these individual sectors together and create a single digital ecosystem where they can catch and connect with buyers of their products and services. It's that simple. So we're more along a health and wellness business focused on the aging and the longevity sector.
So 2 more questions.
Please.
This is full of different sub-segments.
Very much so.
But is it fair to ask the question that in its entirety it's growing?
Yeah, oh, absolutely growing.
Yeah.
So yes, no question. So going back to the sector, you can see the growth rate just in the global population, right? From 2015 to 2050, the world population in this statistic, just this one, used 60 instead of 65. We're going to go from 900 million to 2 billion people in the next 30 years, right? Or so, yeah, all things are growing, and the focus of companies that are seeing the market opportunity and the realization that we have that innovation is a big part of how we're going to solve the problem of how do you serve this growing population with all the things we discussed before. So you have big companies and small companies. in infinitely small companies. One person who creates a solution, for their family member. It's going to sound ridiculous, but for my future father-in-law, he likes to clean his pool. He's 84 years old, and he's digging down into filters and pulling filters out. So I went online and I searched, and there's a company that has a filter that extends up, so you don't have to get down on your hands and knees and pull heavy filters out. It was somebody online,
Create a
built
little
for their
cottage
parents.
business. Yeah.
I was their second customer.
That's funny.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's just a perfect example, a silly example of how you connect people that have these innovative solutions to people that need the solutions through these marketplaces.
Yeah. So one last question on the present raise. Is it constructed in a way as a convertible note, or are you open to?
We have built it into the financial model as pure equity. We're open to both. But from a perspective of the pro forma, and not just in terms of the money raise, in everything, we have tried to be very conservative. So when you look at the cap table that we've built from everything is considered equity, although we both know that it's probably going to be a combination of equity and debt.
Yeah, probably. Great. Well,
we wanted to do worst case scenario.
Yeah. This has been super, super informative. Thanks for spending the time today. You want to wrap it up with just a final comment to the group?
Yeah, no, I would love to meet with you all virtually or in person. I'll be up in New York as often as possible within the next couple of weeks. And if any of you are interested in this, behind what you saw here in the presentation is a much larger presentation and a very robust financial package. But we are looking for folks that are interested in investing in this segment of the population, that have an interest in healthcare and wellness and technology as an integration, a convergent point in that sector. People that are interested in the aging in place and the longevity sector. We're out there looking for $6 million at a minimum during this raise. And if this is a business that you find interesting, I'd love to spend more time and talk with you in detail about it and introduce you to my partner, Luke, learn more about the technology. I think you'll be really impressed with it.
Awesome. Well, like I promised, we'll make sure that everybody who had registered will have it be in touch with you and vice versa. And like I said to the audience earlier, after having heard this, if there are others that you think would benefit from meeting with Richard or having a phone call, that is most welcome. And just full disclosure, one thing I forgot to mention is Garrett Kramer is responsible for bringing Richard to the table. He's our friend, and sorry I didn't mention it, Garrett, earlier at the beginning, but nobody said I was bright. I super thank you for bringing Richard to us, and the community thanks you as well. And as I always say, thank you today for spending with us. The only thing you can't make more of, and that's your time. Until next time. Thank you
so much, Arthur, and thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.